Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a good day so far. A little bit better weather today than yesterday. So this week, we are going to discuss digestion, and this entails discussing a little bit this morning why we eat, then what happens to the food when we eat, and then we're going to discuss a little bit about digestive problems so that we know whether we could take care of it at home, if we need to go get any over-the-counter medicine, or if it's serious enough, should we go get medical attention? So we'll discuss that because unfortunately, digestive problems do happen to all of us at one point or another. And then Thursday, I do want to save a lot of time, if not the whole session, to talk about that diet analysis assignment. I believe the diet analysis assignment is worth 10% of your final grade. So we are going to discuss that in detail on Thursday. As a preview, in case you missed my email, I did mention that ESHA program that we use for the diet analysis, there's a link on Blackboard's, on your course in Blackboard called ESHA, and that's what we'll use for the diet analysis. That appears to only work on Firefox, on the browser for Firefox. I've had some students email me that it wasn't working very well in Google or on Internet Explorer. It didn't work very well on my tablet with, I think it's called Safari. But so far, everything has been good with Firefox, and I apologize for that. It's a brand new system that we just started incorporating within a year. And the reason I did it was it was a affordable option for students. We'll put it that way. The publisher wanted over $100 per student to use their program. So I wouldn't do that option, but instead I've got this one. So we're going to deal with the link only working on Firefox in order to save us $100 per student. But anyway, we'll talk about that diet analysis more. More Thursday. Okay, so we're going to start with digestion today. We have only one learning module this week. It is learning module 7. And I'm going to switch over to my PowerPoint in a moment. But before I do that, I did want to ask you, there are 14 students in class right now. I did want to ask you guys a question. And there could be no wrong answers for this. There's no wrong answers. Type it in the chat room. Tell me why you eat. So go ahead and I will type it in the chat room, and I'm going to check attendance while you're doing that. No wrong answers here, guys. I'll give you the 2 textbook answers in a moment. But there's so many answers for this, and I will read some of these. Good. I know that there should be about actually at this point in time, 16 of you answering. So the question, if you're just getting in here, is why do you eat? All right. So let me read some of these off. I'm sure you know how to look at the chat room anyway, but I want to give myself time to process this. There's like 2 real textbook answers, but there's no wrong answer to that question. I'll summarize a couple of these. It says for energy or to live, and that's probably one of the textbook reasons, right? Is that we need energy to live in order to survive, and we get that energy from food, from the calories in food. Calories are a measurement of energy, and the more energy in a food, the more calories it has, right? We do, when we need energy, our brain will alert us that we're hungry. So one of the answers was that that we eat because we're hungry, and that is true. So when we need energy, our brain is activated to tell us to eat, to tell us that you're hungry, you got to start eating. So the primary reason we should be eating. But there's a lot of other reasons we eat, right? Besides our brain signaling, you need energy to survive. And so sometimes the food tastes good. Sometimes we do it for other reasons than we need energy. I'm so just kind of summarizing these chats. Is anybody ever not hungry but eat?
Yeah, me.
Why do you eat if you don't need the calories or the energy? I'm laughing because I do so too. Because it's yummy, because it's fun, because of cravings. You know what? Those fast food companies, Philip, they want you to crave their food, and they actually put things in the food so you will crave it and short of saying get addicted to it. And then boredom too. We eat for fun. We eat because we're bored. We just want to do something. We don't have anything to do, so we like, okay, I'll do something. I'll go eat. Or maybe it's a social activity. So you guys you did well in that chat room question. You summarized why you eat in many different answers. And wait, before I saw one more chat. Before I share my screen, I want to look at this last chat. Okay, I'm going to share my screen now. We're going to see the two proper answers to that question. But, I asked you, why do you eat? And you guys gave me a lot of right answers. Oh, why is this not working? Hold on. There we go. There's really, all the answers you gave were correct, and they fit in one of two categories, okay? We eat for two different reasons. One is hunger, and one is your appetite, okay? So our hunger is that physiological need for energy. So if our body perceives we need more energy than what is in the body currently, then your brain is going to tell you that you're hungry and you should be eating food, okay? And the brain gets messages from throughout the body, from the nerves in your digestive system. So there's nerve cells in the digestive system. If they don't perceive food, or if they don't perceive nutrients, I should say, in the digestive system, then they're going to signal your brain, well, maybe you guys should start eating. Hormones is a big, big issue with whether we're hungry or not. We have lots of hormones. I've only listed 3 of them for you, but we have so many different hormones. Actually, I've listed 5 if you look at it, that I put insulin, glucagon, ghrelin, CCK, and leptin. These hormones are in the digestive system, and they send messages to your brain. And if we haven't eaten for a long period of time, certain hormones, like this ghrelin, will signal you that you should be eating. If we have eaten a lot of food, other hormones like CCK and leptin and insulin, these hormones will tell your brain, stop eating. All right, so we have hormones that are kind of like a stop and go signal for your brain. Some of them tell your brain to eat, like ghrelin, and some of them tell your brain don't eat, like leptin or CCK or insulin. Well, what ends up happening is sometimes we have hormone problems. Sometimes these hormones don't work properly. Now, an easy one for you to identify is the hormone insulin, right? When we get diabetes, it doesn't work right. Or that causes diabetes, right? It doesn't work. We have it, but it's just not working right. They also think that's the case with this hormone called leptin. We have it, but sometimes it don't work right. And the leptin is the hormone that is actually secreted from your fat cells when you eat. So you're eating food. This hormone is secreted from your fat cells, and it's supposed to tell your brain, stop eating. Well, if it doesn't work in some people, then your brain doesn't get a message to stop eating. So you're eating large quantities of food, but you're not necessarily feeling full. You're not stopping that hunger signal, right? So sometimes these hormones might take like a, I should put it this way. Sometimes these hormones don't work properly. Okay. And then also, thirdly, the amount and type of food we eat is important for our brains to perceive and whether we're hungry or not. And I've mentioned to this, your brain is looking for fiber, healthy fat, vitamins, and minerals. When your brain knows that those things are in its system, then it's going to shut off the hunger. If you do not have those things in your system, vitamins, minerals, healthy fat, and fiber, your brain keeps searching for them and keeps making you hungry, even though you might be putting in a large quantity of calories. All right. It's not just the calories in terms of carbs and fat that shuts that hunger off. It's also those vital ones like fiber and healthy fat and vitamins and minerals that he needs to survive. So you can imagine a situation where a person, I think of this happening to 70% of the population every day. They're eating large quantities of food, but they never really feel full. And it's just that they're eating the wrong nutrients or they're not getting the nutrients they need. Okay, so that is your deal with hunger. So think of it in everyday terms, right? You go a long period of time without food. Our nerves don't see food in the body. Hormones don't see food in the body. Can't find the nutrients we need. The body starts telling the brain, you got to eat. We need some energy. And that's what hunger is called. The actual part of the brain that deals with hunger is called the hypothalamus. I'll show you a picture in a moment. Okay? When we eat, that hunger would decrease if we get the right nutrients. Any questions? Then we'll get on to the fun stuff, right? The fun stuff is your appetite. It's really psychological. It has nothing to do with you needing calories. So your appetite is a psychological desire to eat. This is what happens to a lot of us, right? We go to parties and there's food, so we eat. There's a celebration and we eat. We go to a sporting event and we eat. We're bored. We're happy. We're sad. We're hanging out with our friends. We see ads on television. We drive by fast food restaurants. And it might not necessarily be, oh, I need energy, but it might be, oh, that looks good or that smells good. Or my friends are doing it, so I'll do it too. That is your appetite. And I believe when you guys were answering the questions in the chat room, whichever, I'll put it this way, whatever you mentioned in the chat room would fit into one of these two categories. You guys were either saying, I eat, stay alive because I need energy, and that would be hunger. Or you were writing, it's fun, it tastes good, and that would be appetite. Okay? So we decided that we know at this point in time the difference between hunger and appetite. Hunger is a physiological need for energy. Appetite is your psychological wanting to eat foods. Now you may see this word called satiety or satiety, and that means you're full, that you don't want to eat anymore. Okay? And that feeling of satiety comes when our nerves really feel like our stomach is distended. They feel the large presence of food in it, but also when we get that vital nutrients in the system, and then it will shut off your hunger and instead we'll feel full or satisfied, right? Okay, so that is really why we eat. And there's a lot of reasons why you guys pick the food you do. So before we get into this next one, think about what you ate over the last 24 hours. In fact, I'm going to go back to the chat room so I can see your answers, and then we'll get back to this in a moment. Think about what you eat in the last 2 hours. Okay. Tell me why you picked that food in the chat room. Type out a few things. Why did you pick the food you did within the last 24 hours? Okay. Keep going, guys. There's 18 of you in here, and I've got 3 answers so. I have to laugh. I'm always laughing at myself, guys. I have to laugh when somebody writes the same thing that I would have wrote. And Victoria wins the prize on that one because there wasn't anything else to eat. I was very hungry before class started today because I was working online, and I went in the fridge to grab something as quick as possible, and it was like a leftover omelet I made my kids on. Oh God, it was Saturday morning. The only food you had, it sounded good. Sometimes we're craving food, whatever was available. A lot of times I think it's what is available and what do we have a taste for, right? And that would go with the whole craving thing. What is available and what do we have a taste for? Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing the screen real quick, guys. So what we're talking about now is why we eat, what we pick to eat, and then what happens to the food we eat. I just want to mention about another thing about why we pick the food we do to eat. And I think sometimes it is habits or culture, or simply this is what people that we associate with, our friends and family, eat, and we kind of eat the same thing they do, right? And if you just reflect back about what your favorite food is, a lot of times that really hasn't changed in a lot of years. I mean, my favorite food I could say is still the same thing that was when I was a kid, was my favorite food. Sometimes we get exposed to a new food. For instance, for me, it was sushi. I never ate that in my family or my friends when I was young, but my friend exposed me to that, and I absolutely love it. But then again, when I look back at some of my other favorite foods, I remember eating them as a kid and my mother making them, and they're still my favorite foods. So sometimes it is culture as well. All right, so we've got these foods that we've chosen to eat. Now what happens to them? So they go through what we call the gastrointestinal system, and there's 3 parts to that GI system. It's digestion, absorption, and elimination. There's 3 parts. So we talk a lot about digestion. There's a lot of different organs that digest. The most important part is probably the absorption. The absorption is what occurs when those nutrients finally get into the bloodstream. That's absorption. Absorption means the nutrients are taken into the bloodstream, and then we can finally use it. Up until that point, digestion is just breaking things down, literally churning them up, cutting them into pieces, breaking them down. And the digestive system is completely isolated from the rest of the body, except for the blood vessels that go into it in the small intestine. So when you put that food in your mouth, and I was joking with my kids today, I said I had to teach about digestion today and what happens from the time the food goes into your mouth till the time you poop it out. But what happens in that is completely isolated. The digestive system has no connection with other parts of the body except for the tiny blood vessels that go into the small intestine. Otherwise, what you put in your mouth and poop out never is touched by the rest of the body. Okay? So it's pretty much an enclosed system, the gastrointestinal system, except for those blood vessels in the small intestine. So we'll get to pictures in a moment, in a couple of videos. Then the last part of the gastrointestinal tract is for elimination, and that is when we get rid of the unused or waste products from the body. So the gastrointestinal system has three parts: digestion, absorption, elimination. And what the whole goal of this GI system is to get something called ATP. Okay, so you eat your food, and think of it this way: you're eating fat and carbs. That will eventually get changed into glucose. Or fat. We can also use fat or glucose. The fat and glucose will eventually change into something called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And this ATP is the energy that your body uses. Okay. So that's the whole goal, to get the fat in the carbs to turn into ATP. Then that muscles and your brain and your organs and everything will use that ATP for energy. So let me show you a short video, and then we're going to look at pictures of every organ. All right, that's a commercial break.
Working of digestive system. The digestive system consists of mouth, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, pancreas, and large and small intestine. The working of digestive system begins with the ingestion of food through mouth. Food in the mouth is mixed with saliva. The saliva begins to dissolve the food, and the teeth begins to crush and grind the food. Food is forced back into the throat in pharynx by the tongue. The pharynx is pulled upward to meet the epiglottis. Food then moves from pharynx to the esophagus. Food moves down from esophagus by peristalsis. The peristaltic waves reaches the esophageal sphincter, and then food enters the stomach. The unique muscular structure of stomach breaks the food into smaller pieces called chyme. The chyme exits through pyloric sphincter and then to the duodenum or the smaller intestine. The major portion of digestion and absorption takes place in smaller intestine. The mucosa secretes enzymes and supplements the digestive enzymes of the pancreas and the liver. This completes the chemical process of digestion. The nutrients are transported by the blood to all the cells of the body. The undigested food reaches the ileocolon wall and enters the large intestine or colon. The colon absorbs water, manufactures vitamins, produces mucus, and forms and expels feces. The large intestine pushes the feces into the rectum, which stimulates the defecation reflex.
So I want to comment here, and you can see that this is a totally enclosed system. There's no other way that it's going to touch any blood or muscle or other organ outside the digestive system in the body. The only way these nutrients could get out of the system is with the blood vessels in this small intestine. Okay, and we'll see a little bit more detail about that in a moment. But that's what I mean by an enclosed system. Okay. All right, any questions? Here's an image of the digestive system. Now, I did email you guys at your triton.edu accounts the instructor notes for today. And those instructor notes, let me show you really quickly. Those instructor notes have on them the name of the organ and then a brief description of what it does. So for this lesson this week on digestion, you really need to know, you have to come out of here really knowing two things: the name of the organ and what it does, and then how to treat or prevent digestive problems, okay, which we'll get to in a little bit. So you can use this sheet when you are doing your homework assignment, because the discussion question will say, here's a bunch of organs, tell me what their function is. And then the answer would be right from this sheet. Now, this is obviously very short explanation of the work of the organ, because I just wanted like keywords for you to remember, but you'll learn more when you read the chapter. Okay, and I'm going to be rattling off some of these functions when I show you my PowerPoint, but you know where to go to find the name of the organ and function now. Okay, let's get back to the PowerPoint then. So here's an image of what the digestive system looks like. And we're just going to go organ by organ quickly, unless you have questions, what they do. So the first thing that's broken down is actually occurs in the mouth, and that's carbohydrates. So let's just pretend that we're going to eat a food that has carbs, protein, and fat. The carb digestion begins in the mouth. The protein digestion began until the stomach. And the fat digestion won't begin until the small intestine. So you can see how long something would stay, a nutrient would stay intact, right? Soon as it hits your mouth, carbs are getting broken down. But the protein and the fat don't occur till later. So the function of this salivary gland, and you can see them in this kind of light brown tannish color. These are your salivary glands. They will secrete enzyme to break down carbs. That's their function. Okay, and this is what we call like our spit, right? Our saliva comes out of here, and that's to break down carbs. Then when we swallow, what would occur? Okay, we have two, I like to call them pipes. We used to joke around when we were kids. They were pipes, right? One pipe goes to your stomach, and that's called your esophagus, and one pipe goes to your lungs, which is the trachea. Okay. So on this sheet here, on this image here, I'm sorry, this this reddish, pinkish colored pipe, that's your esophagus, and that's the tube that connects your mouth to your stomach. This blue tube, this connects your mouth to your lungs. So clearly we want the food going down the esophagus, not the trachea. And so what helps us keep the food in the digestive system and not get lodged in this trachea is a little flap of skin called the epiglottis. The epiglottis will close when you swallow, and the food will go down your esophagus. Okay. The epiglottis will block out the food from entering the trachea unless you're choking. And so if a person was choking, what occurred was this epiglottis didn't work right, and the food actually goes into the trachea, and unfortunately the person would be choking. So a couple things. Have you ever heard of this occurring where the epiglottis didn't work right, and why would that happen? What do you guys think? Why would somebody choke where this epiglottis didn't work right?
So epiglottis would open up when the person is sick.
When they're sick?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that is correct. Could be a couple of different issues going on with them being sick.
Throat infection.
Okay, a throat infection. True. Could also be, if a person was vomiting, sometimes they could actually, that epiglottis might not close properly if you had maybe a virus or an infection to the point that you were vomiting and had, upset stomach. That answer is also good, and this is something that nurses really need to worry about. So all you future nurses, pay attention here. If a person is going into surgery and has anesthesia, or is coming out of surgery and they had anesthesia in that surgery, the anesthesia, right, puts us to sleep. It will decrease the functioning of this epiglottis. So this epiglottis is not going to work right if you're under anesthesia or just recovering from it. It could take days actually to come back. So when a person is done with surgery, typically they won't give them any solid food to eat. And you've seen people in the hospital before where they say, you're done with surgery, okay, we're going to give you only liquids. And then they progress to soft foods. And then finally, if they can tolerate that, they'd go to solid food. But the thing is, they will never give a person like a big solid meal right after a surgery because this epiglottis doesn't work right, and it is a chance for choking. Okay, so pay attention to that, guys. If you are going to be a nurse or future doctor in the future, we have to really watch what we're selecting for people to eat when they're sick or right after surgeries. Okay, so watch that. Why else might this epiglottis fail? Class, what would be another reason people choke?
Eating fast.
Eating too fast.
Breathe in, and then when you breathe in, the epiglottis slightly opens and it just gonna go there.
Right. If you're eating too fast. You know, I can't see the chat room or if there's a hand up. So could you just verbally state it?
Eating too much at once.
Okay, eating too much, that would be correct.
Multitasking, like talking while eating.
Yeah, that's a big, big one. Talking while you're eating, laughing while you're eating, you know, laughing is fun and it's good for us, but you don't want to do it when you're eating. So please be careful with that. I have seen way too many people choke and I can't stand it. I've saved a few with the Heimlich maneuver. Kids choke quite a bit because they're running while they're eating or laughing, but you gotta watch that. All right, let's move on. So far we've gotten to the salivary glands, and then we've gotten to the epiglottis, which is a flap of skin that closes off the trachea, so the food will go down your esophagus. And I do want to mention at this time, when you swallow, they change the name of food. When we see it in the outside and it's in your mouth, it's called food. When you swallow, it's now called bolus. That's this green image here. And then if you recall from the video, once it leaves your stomach, it's called chyme. Okay, but it's all the same thing, just the level of breaking down. Okay, we get to stomach next, and here you see the anatomy of the stomach. It has a lot of folds, a lot of little indents and what they call rugae. That's just to increase the surface area. And the stomach's primary function is to try and grind food, to break down food. Before that, oh, I don't know, went a little too fast. Before that chyme, excuse me, the bolus gets into the stomach, before the bolus gets into the stomach, it has to pass through a flap of skin called the cardioesophageal sphincter. It's a one-way valve that's supposed to let the food in and not go back out. And that's called the cardiac sphincter. Then we're in the stomach here with this bolus, and it's getting broken down and churned up and cut apart. In the stomach, we have pepsin and hydrochloric acid that will break down protein. So this is the first spot that protein actually gets broken down. The protein will remain intact and whole in your mouth and your esophagus until it reaches the stomach. And we could start breaking protein down into its individual amino acids. All right, and then there's another valve that when we're leaving the stomach, the bolus now becomes called chyme. It's called the pyloric sphincter. This one-way valve will open up. The pyloric sphincter will open up and let the food through into the small intestine. All right, so there's two one-way. It's like a little flap of skin. One's the cardiac sphincter, one's the pyloric sphincter. Cardiac sphincter lets the food in and shuts behind it, and then this pyloric sphincter lets the food out of the stomach and shuts behind it. And it's important for me to mention, you want these things to work, these two sphincters. If they don't work, you are going to get situations of vomiting or heartburn, right? If this cardiac sphincter doesn't work and this acid from the stomach goes back into the esophagus, that's heartburn. So we need these things to work. Unfortunately, same thing with this anesthesia or pain pills, they may not work very well. So if you know a person who's on pain medication, or indeed even over-the-counter medicine sometimes, like too much ibuprofen, some of these sphincters might not work very well. All right. If you look up here, this is the esophagus. It leads into the stomach. And then after we exit the stomach, it's the small intestine. That's my favorite organ, the small intestine. Here is on the right side of your screen, this is the image. It's blue, purple, and I don't know, this pinkish color again. It's about 10 feet long. So the small intestine is very long. And that is so we have a lot of time and length to absorb nutrients. We want to get as much carbs, protein, fat, vitamins, mineral, water out of the digestive system and into the blood vessels as we possibly could. And this absorption occurs in the small intestine. The absorption of nutrients. If you look here, this is a portion of the small intestine, and you can see blood vessels going into it. The function of these blood vessels going into the small intestine is to absorb as many nutrients as they can. So I like to say this is my favorite organ because this is where all the action occurs. This is the time where you're getting those nutrients out of the food into your working system. Okay, and then we'll go to the large intestine. Whatever's left over from the small intestine gets sent to this large intestine. And what it does is primarily reabsorb any nutrients that were lost. So if there was any water, vitamins, or minerals that got passed through, they could try to reabsorb a little bit more. And then once we get towards this descending part of the large intestine, we're going to process the waste and then store it in the rectum. The anal canal will then open for elimination. Okay, so the beginning portion of the large intestine is reabsorption, and then towards the later parts is getting the waste ready for elimination. Now, another name for the large intestine is called colon. So if you've ever heard of that word colon before, that is your large intestine. And what most doctors will refer colon to is this descending portion, or the sigmoid colon. A lot of doctors, although the whole thing is called the colon, a lot of doctors will really kind of save that nickname here for this portion. All right, that's your large intestine. And then, as that video mentioned, we do have some helping organs that help with digestion. And I'll start with one that you already know about. It's the pancreas. That one, pancreas, will make the insulin and glucagon. And you've heard those words before, insulin and glucagon. When we eat any carbohydrate, the pancreas sends that insulin and glucagon into the system to help us digest it. The same thing happens with liver. Your liver is going to make bile. And the bile is sent to the small intestine to break down fat. I forgot to mention where fat starts to get broken down as a secondary reminder to you. But fat begins to be broken down predominantly in the small intestine. So it stays intact until it gets all the way to the small intestine. And the liver makes the bile to help digest fat. Okay. All right. Now, gallbladder, you can see here there's a little green pouch that's attached to the liver. This is called the gallbladder. And this actually stores bile. So the liver makes bile, and the bile will be stored in this gallbladder. And here you will see it could be secreted into the small intestine when we get fat into the small intestine. All right. Now, if somebody has problems with their gallbladder and needs it removed, you may have heard of somebody say, I've had my gallbladder removed. So your little storage site for bile is gone. And what ends up happening is the liver then not only makes bile, but also will store it. But the problem is, and again, nurses pay attention, when a person loses their gallbladder, it seems anytime they eat fat, that they end up getting diarrhea. And what happens is this liver pretty much secretes all the bile it has all at one time. The liver senses that there's fat in the small intestine, and it's like, okay, I got to do my job, secrete bile. But instead of only sending a little in comparison to what amount of fat is present, it just sends it all. And then what ends up happening is there's too much sometimes, and it causes diarrhea. So note that people without gallbladder a lot of times end up with diarrhea when they eat fatty foods. Okay, hopefully you didn't get too bored with my little lecture there. I try to cut down on some lecture times now that we're, heading into the middle of class. I'm going to show you another review video of the digestive system, and then I'll take questions, okay?
Do your students like watching explosions, cute animals, and awesome science experiments? Then onto the scene. These enzyme-rich juices break the fat molecule. Across the whole planet, humans eat on average between 1 and 2.7 kilograms of food a day. That's over 365 kilograms a year per person, and more than 28,800 kilograms over the course of a lifetime. And every last scrap makes its way through the digestive system. Comprised of 10 organs, covering 9 meters, and containing over 20 specialized cell types, this is one of the most diverse and complicated systems in a human body. Its parts continuously work in unison to fulfill a singular task, transforming the raw materials of your food into the nutrients and energy that keep you alive. Spanning the entire length of your torso, the digestive system has 4 main components. First, there's the gastrointestinal tract, a twisting channel that transports your food and has an internal surface area of between 30 and 40 square meters, enough to cover half a badminton court. Second, there's the pancreas, gallbladder, and liver, a trio of organs that break down food using an array of special juices. Third, the body's enzymes, hormones, nerves, and blood all work together to break down food, modulate the digestive process, and deliver its final products. Finally, there's the mesentery, a large stretch of tissue that supports and positions all your digestive organs in the abdomen, enabling them to do their jobs. The digestive process begins before food even hits your tongue. Anticipating a tasty morsel, glands in your mouth start to pump out saliva. We produce about 1.5 liters of this liquid each day. Once inside your mouth, chewing combines with the sloshing saliva to turn food into a moist lump called the bolus. Enzymes present in the saliva break down any starch. Then your food finds itself at the rim of a 25 centimeter long tube called the esophagus, down which it must plunge to reach the stomach. Nerves in the surrounding esophageal tissue sense the bolus's presence and trigger peristalsis, a series of defined muscular contractions. That propels the food into the stomach, where it's left at the mercy of the muscular stomach walls, which pound the bolus, breaking it into chunks. Hormones secreted by cells in the lining trigger the release of acids and enzyme-rich juices from the stomach wall that start to dissolve the food and break down its proteins. These hormones also alert the pancreas, liver, and gallbladder to produce digestive juices and transfer bile, a yellowish-green liquid that digests fat, in preparation for the next stage. After 3 hours inside the stomach, the once shapely bolus is now a frothy liquid called chyme, and it's ready to move into the small intestine. The liver sends bile to the gallbladder, which secretes it into the first portion of the small intestine, called the duodenum. Here, it dissolves the fats floating in the slurry of chyme so they can be easily digested by the pancreatic and intestinal juices that have leached onto the scene. These enzyme-rich juices break the fat molecules down into fatty acids and glycerol for easier absorption into the body. The enzymes also carry out the final deconstruction of proteins into amino acids and carbohydrates into glucose. This happens in the small intestine's lower regions, the jejunum and ileum, which are coated in millions of tiny projections called villi. These create a huge surface area to maximize molecule absorption and transference into the bloodstream. The blood takes them on the final leg of their journey to feed the body's organs and tissues. But it's not over quite yet. Leftover fiber, water, and dead cells sloughed off during digestion make it into the large intestine, also known as the colon. The body drains out most of the remaining fluid through the intestinal wall. What's left is a soft mass called stool. The colon squeezes this byproduct into a pouch called the rectum, where nerves sense it expanding and tell the body when it's time to expel the waste. The byproducts of digestion exit through the anus, and the food's long journey, typically lasting between 30 and 40 hours, is finally complete. TED-Ed is a nonprofit. If you value our work, please consider supporting it on patreon.com.
Okay, do you guys got any questions on the digestive system?
No.
Let me see something here. I just want to check the chat room because I heard a couple of things. No questions. You should be able to, at this point, if I said, what is the name of the organ, tell me its function. Really, that's where we're at right now. If I said name, if I said, give me the function of the stomach or the small intestine or the esophagus, you should be able to tell me what that is. The other thing I wanted to review real quick is just the difference between appetite and hunger. You should know hunger is physiologic, appetite is psychological. And then, the different things that control that hunger, we should probably know by now as well. Okay, so no questions on those. There's two more things I want to do today. And one is just talk real quickly about your gut health and how to keep the bacteria in your intestines healthy. We mentioned in the past that there's a bunch of bacteria, like millions of bacteria in your intestines. And those things, they used to think really served only a digestive purpose, to break foods down or absorb them. But now we realize that they play a role in almost all the health of your body. They play a large role in our immune system. And so we need to keep these things healthy, because once we lose gut bacteria, they don't ever come back. They have not found a way to have them regrow yet. And so we know that if we're losing gut bacteria, our immune system is compromised, and we're going to be more at risk for all different kinds of acute and chronic illnesses. So we have to keep them alive and healthy. Does anybody remember what this gut bacteria pretty much eats that it needs to survive? Which nutrient? And I mentioned this about a week ago or so. Anybody guess or remember? What does the gut bacteria feed on?
Isn't it all vitamin E?
Nope.
I mean, no, not vitamin. No. I remember you saying that. I kind of remember what it is. I just can't get the name out.
Well, I appreciate you trying. I do. Because sometimes I'm here talking and I'm wondering if anybody's listening because I can't see the faces. Do you guys want me to tell you what it is?
Yes.
Or somebody want to guess? Anybody other guesses? What does your gut bacteria feed on? What does it need to stay alive? Fiber. Do you remember now?
Yeah.
Okay, so Anyway, your gut bacteria eats fiber. So this is the importance of a high fiber diet. If you're going to do your diet analysis next week and you find out you're only eating 5 grams of fiber a day, basically your gut bacteria is starving. It's not doing well. We need at least 30 or more grams of fiber a day to keep this gut bacteria healthy. And that, this way, that keeps your digestive system healthy and running properly, but also your immune system. And so if you're thinking of ways, how am I going to fight off COVID if I get it? How am I going to fight off cancer? How am I going to fight off heart disease? How am I going to fight off the flu? You're going to need to keep these gut bacteria healthy and functioning properly. And so what we feed them is very important, okay? So I do have a quick short video about gut bacteria I want to show you, and then we're going to talk a little bit about digestive problems.
Trillions of bacteria, viruses, and fungi live on or inside of us, and maintaining a good, balanced relationship with them is to our advantage. Together, they form the gut microbiome, a rich ecosystem that performs a variety of functions in our bodies. The bacteria in our guts can break down food the body can't digest, produce important nutrients, regulate the immune system, and protect against harmful germs. We don't yet have the blueprint for exactly which good bacteria a robust gut needs, but we do know that it's important for a healthy microbiome to have a variety of bacterial species. Many factors affect our microbiomes, including our environment, medications like antibiotics, and even whether we were delivered by C-section or not. Diet, too, is emerging as one of the leading influences on the health of our guts. And while we can't control all these factors, we can manipulate the balance of our microbes by paying attention to what we eat. Dietary fiber from foods like fruits, vegetables, nuts, legumes, and whole grains is the best fuel for gut bacteria. When bacteria digest fiber, they produce short-chain fatty acids that nourish the gut barrier, improve immune function, and can help prevent inflammation, which reduces the risk of cancer. And the more fiber you ingest, the more fiber-digesting bacteria colonize your gut. In a recent study, scientists exchanged the regular high-fiber diets of a group of rural South Africans with the high-fat, meat-heavy diets of a group of African Americans. After just 2 weeks on the high-fat, low-fiber, Western-style diet, the rural African group showed increased inflammation of the colon as well as a decrease of butyrate. That's a short-chain fatty acid thought to lower risk of colon cancer. Meanwhile, the group that switched to a high-fiber, low-fat diet had the opposite result. So what goes wrong with our gut bacteria when we eat low-fiber processed foods? Lower fiber means less fuel for the gut bacteria, essentially starving them until they die off. This results in less diversity and hungry bacteria. In fact, some can even start to feed on the mucus lining. We also know that specific foods can affect gut bacteria. In one recent microbiome study, scientists found that fruits, vegetables, tea, coffee, red wine, and dark chocolate were correlated with increased bacterial diversity. These foods contain polyphenols, which are naturally occurring antioxidant compounds. On the other hand, foods high in dairy fat, like whole milk, and sugar-sweetened sodas were correlated with decreased diversity. How food is prepared also matters. Minimally processed, fresh foods generally have more fiber and provide better fuel. So lightly steamed, sautéed, or raw vegetables are typically more beneficial than fried dishes. There are also ways of preparing food that can actually introduce good bacteria, also known as probiotics, into your gut. Fermented foods are teeming with helpful probiotic bacteria like lactobacillus and bifidobacteria. Originally used as a way of preserving foods before the invention of refrigeration, fermentation remains a traditional practice all over the world. Foods like kimchi, sauerkraut, tempeh, and kombucha provide variety and vitality to our diets. Yogurt is another fermented food that can introduce helpful bacteria into our guts. That doesn't necessarily mean that all yogurt is good for us, though. Brands with too much sugar and not enough bacteria may not actually help. These are just general guidelines. More research is needed before we fully understand exactly how any of these foods interact with our microbiomes. We see positive correlations, but the insides of our guts are difficult places to make direct observations. For instance, we don't currently know whether these foods are directly responsible for the changes in diversity, or if something more complicated is happening. While we're only beginning to explore the vast wilderness inside our guts, we already have a glimpse of how crucial our microbiomes are for digestive health. The great news is we have the power to fire up the bacteria in our bellies. Fill up on fibers, fresh and fermented foods, and you can trust your gut to keep you going strong.
Okay. So class, I'm hoping that by now you're understanding a lot more about the science of why we need to eat healthy. I think that for the general population and people who don't take this class, I think they know, oh, we got to eat healthy so, we maintain our weight, or so we don't get like a heart attack or something. But I'm hoping by now you're seeing some of the intricate details about why we need to eat the foods that the healthy nutrients that we need to eat, why we need to eat complex carbohydrates, fiber to feed our gut bacteria, but also to keep us satiated, to keep us feeling full, the vitamins and minerals so that our brains will signal that we're not hungry anymore. The same thing with healthy fat. So not only does our heart and our brain utilize the healthy fat to improve its integrity, but also to help us feel full. So hopefully you're learning more about the science of the nutrients and why it is so important. And that last video should really be, a green light for you to say, we really need to be eating fiber, right? It keeps us full, but it basically feeds your immune system. It feeds that gut bacteria so that we have normal digestion and a normal immune response. So let's talk a moment before we finish today about digestive disorders. So there's two parts to your discussion this week. One is I list an organ, you got to tell me its function. And the second part of your discussion question is you have to pick a digestive disorder and list the definition, the cause, signs and symptoms, and treatment options of the digestive disorder. Now, on the PowerPoint, I have a lot of them listed here. If you look through these, maybe you know about some of them already. You could pick any one you want, and you're going to write about it in the discussion board. What I wanted to mention about some of these digestive problems is a lot of them are caused by eating the wrong types of foods, by ingesting drugs that are unnecessary, by stress, or by sleep problems, which is a stressor, okay? So there's a lot of different digestive disorders. And when you're going through them, and we're talking about what causes digestive problems. So if I was to say what causes these things on this page, belly aches, right? What causes stomach aches? A lot of it goes back to not eating healthy, not eating enough fiber, not eating enough water, eating too much processed food, too much salt, too much processed carbs, processed fats, the use of unnecessary drugs. And that's the last line here. This guy's stomach is on fire, but look, is it due to soda, caffeine, alcohol, cigarettes, drugs? Could even be allergies or intolerances. So a lot of time people will get something like heartburn and they're like, oh, I got a stomach ache or I got, pains in my esophagus, and they're trying to figure out what causes it. Many times it's drugs. It's too much alcohol, too much caffeine, maybe the caffeine's in soda, or these over-the-counter drugs. So you have to look and try to figure out, when we're talking about digestive orders, what is causing it, and then get rid of the cause. If you're just trying to mask it up by taking Pepto-Bismol or an antacid, the problem's never going to go away. We have to really investigate and say, what is the actual cause of this digestive problem, and then try to eliminate that. So in addition to poor nutrition or drugs, the other issue that causes a lot of digestive problems is being overweight. If you've got a huge layer of fat on your stomach, and that's pressing on that stomach, it's going to cause pain. It's going to cause indigestion. It's going to cause heartburn or acid reflux. So maintaining a normal body weight, eating healthy, and then avoiding stress or drugs is really the conservative method to trying to cure these digestive problems. You can run and get an over-the-counter drug, and it might make you feel better for the day, and that's okay. But you really need to figure out, is it poor diet? Is it being overweight? Is it too stressed out? Is it a drug that's causing these? And then try to get rid of that. Now, some unfortunate digestive problems are, what do they call them? Allergies or intolerances. Does anybody have an allergy to food in the class? I thought I heard some people say last week that they did.
Yeah, avocados.
Avocado? Anybody else have and just name the food if you're allergic to something. Nobody else allergic to foods? I thought I heard a couple people say they were. Okay. So what you're going to do in the discussion question for the week is pick one of these. And I would encourage you to pick one that either you are suffering from, somebody in your family is suffering from, right? The beginning ones are pretty common. Everybody vomited or had diarrhea or constipation at one point. In fact, even heartburn or having heartburn all the time is called gastroesophageal reflux disease, or ulcers. These are pretty common. But then we get to some of these less common but very painful ones: Crohn's, celiac, irritable bowel, or here we have even gastrointestinal cancer. So you're going to pick one. In the discussion room, you're going to write down the definition, the cause, the signs and symptoms, and then treatment or prevention. The discussion room does have these directions again, so don't worry about writing them down right now. Okay. So that is really it for today for our digestion lesson. I will stick around for questions. As I mentioned to you before, if I've taken your attendance, you're free to go unless you have a question. If you came in late when I was already lecturing, you need to raise your hand, and then I will take attendance and you could go. David and Victoria, I have you. Joe Sean, I have you. Jordan, I have you. All right, thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Have a great day.
Okay, you too.
Have a nice day.
Everybody have a good day. We're going to do that diet analysis Thursday. Remember. Bye-bye.